Welcome to the Media Leader Podcast. I'm Jack Benjamin. A few weeks ago, the Media Leader team was up in Manchester to host our inaugural Future of Media Manchester event. We've since talked about takeaways from the event here on this podcast, as well as on our website at themedialeader.co.uk, but one session stood out that we wanted to give a bit more airtime to. The same day of the event, Stagwell, a challenger media holding company, released new research that found advertising against news articles published by trusted outlets is brand safe, regardless of whether the article is about politics, war, crime, entertainment, or sport. The research undermined common concerns that advertisers express about not wanting their ads to be placed next to hard news content, which they often, wrongly it seems, deem brand unsafe. Since then, there has been an additional study by Teeds and Lumen, which came to a similar conclusion. At the Future of Media Manchester event, members from Stagwell agencies HarrisX and Goodstuff took the stage to unpack the research and make the case for advertisers to increase investment for news publishers. The session was hosted by Ozone's Client Services Director Emma Cranston and featured Alex Chizhik, Chief Commercial Officer at HarrisX, and Paul Gayfer, Planning Partner at Goodstuff Communications. We presented here for you to listen to, lightly edited for your convenience. We hope you enjoy.
Welcome. I'm Emma from Ozone, and Ozone is an audience platform powering the premium web. Alongside other sites, we're there to inform and entertain. Now, we are an industry partner to the research Stagwell have done for the future of news because we've got a shared passion to safeguard the free press and the news industry, which is essential for democracy. And without it, we could be living in a world of fake news, and we definitely don't want that. Now, with the challenges facing print circulations, digital advertising revenue is critical for news brands' survival. Unfortunately, there are many blockers that prevent them from capitalising on this digital revenue, such as keyword blocklists, the perceived negative news association with hard news, brand safety, and suitability. So it's no wonder publishers are turning to content where they can, producing content where they can run ads and driving page views. So within this session, we'll be addressing some of these hurdles with the findings from this research and be discussing with this panel, who I'm going to introduce you to. We've got Paul Gayfer, the Chief Strategy Officer from Goodstuff, which is a UK Stagwell agency. And we'll have Alex Chizhik, Chief Commercial Officer from HarrisX, who conducted the research. And Alex flew all the way from America to be with us today, so we're privileged. So before we get into the panel, Alex is going to give us a quick summary of the slides, of a few slides of the study. Over to you, Alex.
Thank you, Emma, and thanks, everyone. Super happy to be here. Hopefully my accent doesn't surprise anyone, but I'm probably the farthest person that's come here. So let's see if the clicker works. So look, Alex Chizhik, again, Chief Commercial Officer of HarrisX. We're a global marketing, analytics, and consulting agency, part of Stagwell. And like the rest of Stagwell, we believe, and like Emma introduced, that news is a critical function of democracy. And we also believe that there's an untapped or undertapped potential where people are leaving, and we're living in a polarized world, and people are leaving traditional news publishers. And what we're seeing is brands are stopping advertising next to traditional news publishers. And why? They're nervous about their brand being next to stories that are perceived maybe brand safe or brand unsafe to publish in. And we want to change that. I think as a world and as a society, it's time for us to moderate a little bit and come back from the fringes and talk to each other. We're all humans. We're sharing this moment of time together on Earth, and it's time to just kind of reel it all in. And we want to show data that actually shows how we can do that. We're in a vicious cycle now where the news quality is dropping because ad revenues are falling. Ad revenues fall, there's less revenue and less money to go around for news resources, for good journalism. It creates an incentive for clickbaity articles. And that creates more polarization, which creates worse stories, worse research news articles, which leads to less revenue and so on and so forth. We think we can change this into a virtuous cycle where brands can reach untapped or undertapped audiences, what we call them news junkies, which are typically more affluent, actually more engaged. They're a very critical and good component for agencies and brands. And obviously, if they can advertise to them, then news publications will have more resources to spend and to dedicate and invest in good journalism. And that creates a reverse virtuous cycle back. Better journalism, better stories, bringing people back from sources of disinformation into well-researched articles, bringing more brands to fund and advertise on those platforms, and so on and so forth. We ran a study in the US and just redid this in the UK. And actually, this is a gigantic experiment. We interviewed more than 22,000 Brits, and we put 6 main brands, Marks and Spencer, Sky, McDonald's, British Airways, and others, in front of them across 8 different news categories: 5 brand safe, or 5 brand unsafe, perceived brand unsafe, and 3 brand safe. And what we've done, and what you can see here, is we've tested different brand attributes. Some things were the purchase funnel, so purchase intent, favorability. Others were just typical brand metrics, like does this represent my values, and would I work in this company, and does it offer good value to customers? Well, we found the results are pretty astounding. There is actually no significant difference between brands that advertise next to brand not safe news articles versus brand safe news articles. That is for brand, for favorability, and for the purchase funnel. This is empirical evidence that says that brands should mostly care about where they advertise a good news publication versus what story they advertise next to. And we hope that this finally allows and gives brands air cover to come back and advertise within news publications and bring good news back to the fold. So I'll pause here, but we'll turn over to you.
Excellent, thank you. I think some key takeouts in there. Hard news is brand safe. So Alex, the US conducted this research a few months ago with very similar findings. What's the reaction been from brands and publishers over there?
It's been very favorable, and we actually previewed this in Cannes and in New York, and now we're doing it here, and today later on in London. In the previous sessions, extremely favorable. Extremely favorable. We were the talk of the town in Cannes. I hope that's true. I hope we're the talk of the town here as well. But I think the idea that it's okay to advertise next to a variety of news articles, it's okay to bring money back to news, that news has this news junkie cohort that's an extremely valuable cohort for brands to advertise next to. And frankly, that we need to invest in real, solid, nonpartisan journalism that gives us facts instead of polarized clickbaity articles. All of this, we can come back to the fold, and it starts with advertising, and it starts with good news.
Absolutely, we definitely need to come together. One of the biggest barriers that we're seeing, the blockers for news brands, is keyword block lists. And a bit from Ozone, we see this time and time again, like, oh, they've stopped being updated. A big one we saw over the summer was actually Paris still being in people's keyword block list from the 2015 Paris attacks. And there was so much amazing Olympic Paris content that just couldn't be monetized because it was being blocked. Another one is Pink News, one of Ozone's publishers. People want to be more inclusive, use Pink News, reach a diverse audience, but they've still got lesbian and gay on their block list. It's like, that just doesn't work. Paul, what can we do here? How can we stop this?
So I think from the first point, it's thinking about why we do this at a contextual point of view, at a micro level within sites. So my background is in print, that's why I'm here. I've got a passion for print and publishing still. And back then we wouldn't question whether which kind of story a newspaper ad would sit next to. Ultimately, we were aiming for the best quality news. We're aiming for the best audiences and the most eyeballs. So we've got to think about why does that apply to digital advertising over the traditional print advertising. I think secondly, we need to recognise that block lists are a very blunt tool. And as you can say, they can get bloated, they can get out of date very quickly. So there's a huge amount of technology out there to help us be better at the way that we use that. So we use category block lists rather than keyword block lists at the start, and a number of ad tech partners that can help us to deliver on that at a much broader level. Also, we work with the Conscious Ad Network, who are very good at setting manifestos around hate speech and brand safe content and follow their guidelines on how to be better advertisers in this space, because not only are they campaigning for more safety in our advertising, but also, as we're talking about, the support of quality journalism, quality news and quality content for consumers.
Absolutely. I think we were touched on before, obviously, news brands being trusted media brands. Do you think there's a halo effect of brands advertising around these trusted media brands? And is that impact greater than being running next to a perceived negative article? Alex?
Yeah, this is a fantastic question. And it goes actually to the heart of our research. There is a halo effect. It's about where you advertise, right? So if you advertise with the BBC, for example, or the Times or the Sun, regardless of ideology, when you're advertising on good, solid media brands, your brand is perceived in a more positive light. It has nothing to do with the story. The story, editorial pieces, opinion pieces within any of these publications, that's separate. It's about the medium and the publication. And so as long as brands think about it from that perspective, both digital and print, and you focus on where you advertise, there's a mutually beneficial halo effect, in fact, for both, right? So if you have McDonald's in the Sun or McDonald's on some far right or far left website, that's very, very different than McDonald's being, let's say, with the Times on the Sun or Independent, with this news article about the Middle East or the news article about inflation, which is deemed brand unsafe or perceived to be brand unsafe.
I think it's really important. One of the biggest themes that we've seen come through in client briefs, probably over the last 2 to 3 years, is the word trust. And we want to be a trusted brand. And I think we're getting more and more research in media now that suggests that trust is a driver of effectiveness, is a driver of market share, it's a driver of preference. A great report from the Ad Association released this June. We've seen work from ThinkBox previously on things like signaling. But what I think is interesting is a lot of that research has focused on channels. So, how do different channels provide implicit signals to the brands in terms of where you advertise, and less around brands. So I think something that we can do in this space is reconfigure and remove some of those artificial barriers that don't really exist between channels anymore. And yes, of course, different channels will project different favorability onto brand and different business metrics. But thinking about how we can buy into media brands over media channels, in this space especially, I think could be a really interesting way in. And publications and publishers particularly, I think, have been some of the best brands to embrace sort of a digital age. They've extended into podcasts and events and newsletters and apps. Publishers have a great reach. So if you are looking to build trust for your brand, if you're looking to build some of those implicit signals that we're learning much more about now in media planning, then leaning into news publications and quality news and across all of their different channel outputs is a wonderful way to do that.
Interesting to talk about channels, because I think there's been a lot of debate about whether digital display works, and sometimes I have to tend to agree with them because it's the way it's deployed. But we know the premium web is very different, and there's been numerous studies that time and time again they prove that actually premium web drives outcomes, but yet the premium web still gets bucketed with digital display. How can we differentiate the premium web from the rest of the open web? Paul?
You want me to go on there? Well, I think it goes back to that point. We're way beyond a point in media planning and media strategy where you should be seeing a line on a plan that says digital display, and I'm sure it sneaks through from time to time as well. So I think thinking about the kind of media brands that we use, obviously the great tool that digital display advertising has given us has been the opportunity to chase audiences, but it doesn't always have to be within digital display. Just because we can doesn't mean we should, and I think there's been an over-optimization within that, and over-targeting within digital display, the holy grail of chasing individuals at scale. So obviously we know that audience buys are going to be hugely significant, but also how can we lean back into context? How can we think about premium environments, maybe fixed sites even, which areas of a premium news site do we want to associate with? And how do we look into premium inventory, contextual buying, etc., to move away from how display and programmatic advertising is usually planned and measured.
Any thoughts on that one, Alex?
Oh, I can't help that. That's perfect.
What are your hopes for the reaction in the UK from this research, Alex?
look, I'm hoping that this is a two-sided marketplace. It's two sides of a coin, right? There's burden on news agencies. There was a good panel between our chairman, Mark Penn, and some of the presidents of the various big New York Times, CNN, and the States news agencies, and Khan, I believe. And the president of CNN said, look, the burden is on us also to deliver solid, unbiased news. I'm hoping the brands see that limiting their spend, limiting advertising based on the different stories that folks can run just leads us down to a really bad path. From a citizenship perspective, from a humanitarian perspective, but frankly from a selfish business perspective, the news junkie audience is a very valuable audience. They're more affluent. They typically don't have mortgages. They have more money to spend. They're more engaged. It's, the holy grail, and we have this on the slide, is, people that watch sports, right? Sports watchers, sports junkies, if you will. Very captive audience for brands. And so a lot of money is being poured, the World Cup, Champions League, and so on and so forth. Money is being poured into sports. We think that news junkies and people who are really engaged in the news are that same, have a very similar makeup. So brands are under tapping that market, just from a very, kind of cynical, let's advance our business point of view. So I'm hoping the brands can see the light. Take a chance, take a leap, we can help, but start advertising on good news publications. It's a channel question. It's not a subject question. And when that happens, we will see news start centering, start being less clickbaity, and come back into this virtual cycle. We were once there before. We don't have to be where we are now. The segment, the audience is still extremely valuable. So I'm hoping that we can all take a breath. You guys, we were just talking about the elections, not to get political, but it seems like the country, the UK, is coming together a little bit recently. It's not like that for us in the US. We're very polarized. But I hope that we can all just take a breath and come together as people, as societies, and it just becomes better for everyone, both from a societal point of view and, frankly, a business point of view.
Absolutely. Before we've got time for one more quick question, what would be one short sentence that you'd say to advertisers who are nervous around advertising against hard news? Paul?
I think in summary, it may be something that we don't consider enough as an industry. Sorry, you asked for a short sentence, didn't you?
No, go for it.
There's lots of commas. It's one sentence. We get the media environment we deserve, and I think that's something we potentially don't think and talk about, is the money that we invest every day fuels the kind of media channels, the media content, and the media environment that we get to advertise in the future. So I think this, we know, is a brilliant, important content and context for both advertisers and consumers, and so therefore recognising the importance and not sort of avoiding it because of the limitations that have previously been expected and perceived. There's too many commas in that sentence. I'll stop there.
It's hard to summarize in one sentence. I'll echo what I said before. I think take a leap for brands. It's okay to get in front of people. It's okay, I think, and in fact, I think it makes business sense to support the news medium as a medium to reach very lucrative, very engaged audiences. And as we have the new generations, Gen Zs and so on, coming up, they're not getting their news from mainstream media. They're just not. And so to get that trust back, we need to be able to produce good, solid journalistic pieces. So it helps everyone, and it helps you tap the new generation of folks. It shows you as a leader. If you're a brand and you're willing to do these things, you're going to become the leader in the eyes of future massive purchasing blocks.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. If you want to know more about the research, the Media Leader has published the article this morning, so head over to there. But thank you to Paul and Alex.
Thank you for listening to the Media Leader podcast. You can find and listen to all our episodes on our website at themedialeader.co.uk or wherever you get your podcasts. But just remember, please do subscribe to be notified when we release our next episode. From all of us at the Media Leader, I'm editor Omar Oakes. Our executive producer is Jack Benjamin. See you next time.